Hey everyone, this week on the Digital Marketing Scoop, I am talking with Ernest Cantillon all about cryptocurrency, NFTs, Whisky, and his project, DramEx. So obviously this is a bit different to normally what we talk about, but I came across the project on LinkedIn, and it really piqued my attention. And I think this is a space, the NFT space is going to be something that's probably going to be huge over the next few years. So if you don't know what NFTs are, or if you're interested in them, I think you will find this an interesting episode. It's probably a lot to take in. We probably jumped all over the place from topic to topic, but it's well worth a listen. And thank you very much, Ernest, for joining me on it and sharing your info on the project. Enjoy. Ernest, thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure.
I suppose before I came, I knew you beforehand, but I saw a project that kind of blew me away on LinkedIn one day. Before we dive into that project, maybe just for everyone listening, tell them a bit about yourself, kind of what you do.
Sure. I'm in hospitality primarily, I guess, and I still am. So Sober Lane and Electric are the daytime 9 to 5 or 5 to 9, as the case may be, or whatever. So I opened Sober Lane maybe 15 years ago, Electric maybe 10 years ago. Have been in and out of other things since. We've had a Sober Lane in Dublin. I was involved in creating Voodoo, which is a real nightclub, hard business, but a real fun one I enjoyed a lot. And about 5 years ago, with the man called Tom Reardon and our third partner, Colin Ross, we set up Kinsale Spirit Company. So Kinsale Gin and Red Earl Irish Whiskey, and that business is really kicking off. Thank God. It was one of the few maybe that the pandemic was friendly to. And then DramEx is the latest baby, which you noticed. So yeah, lots going on.
Brilliant altogether. You're a busy man. So I suppose when I saw this project come across, literally on LinkedIn, scrolling through one day, and when I saw the name and I kind of saw what it was, I was like, okay, this is out of LA or New York or London or somewhere like that. And then I spotted yourself as the owner project. I was like, that is amazing. So if you would, I suppose for everyone listening, maybe before you jump into DramEx, maybe just a little explanation on the side of NFTs, of crypto, that side of things.
Maybe I'll tell you how it came about. Yeah. And the reason I'll do that is that that's how I've ended up in that space, because it wouldn't be my comfort zone. Like hospitality, like my day job is serving toasted specials and pints of Guinness. And like, okay, I'm sure you can tokenize a pint of Guinness if you want, but I don't see much point in it. So it's very traditional. Somebody said to me before that the two things you'll never be able to get online are a pint of Guinness and a haircut. And it was the two things that people wanted during the pandemic, pints of stout and haircuts. So, and in fairness, people came up with innovative solutions to deliver both, as we saw. So for me, through Kinsale Spirits, we've planning mission for Distillery in Kinsale, and we hope to build a distillery. But it will take maybe 6 months. So that process has been probably a year and a half in finding the right site and getting planning and the spec. And all things going well, the distillery will be functional for the first time by the end of this year. We lay down a cask of whiskey. It'll be 3 to 4 years before we can even call it whiskey. So, but I didn't want to wait that long to have a whiskey in the market. So we're dependent on buying whiskey from other people. There's 2 distilleries primarily in Ireland that sell whiskey to other people, West Cork Distillers and Great Northern Distillery, which is owned by Mr. Teeling in Dundalk. So suddenly then I had my insight into the whole whiskey trading and wholesale thing, because we needed to become a buyer of it before we could become a seller of it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So, and West Cork Distillers have been great trade partners for us and make Kinsale Gin. So we said, okay, let's try somebody else. And to be honest, I suppose not to be just one supplier, let's spread our relationships. So we built a relationship with Great Northern, which has been very, very good for us. They're just a pleasure to deal with. Both those distilleries are. So West Cork Distillers have some of their own really successful brands, and they supply other people. But Great Northern is primarily a wholesale distillery. They distill whiskey for other people. And there's lots of brands that you would know that actually come from there. So, and actually we've always been upfront about that. I think if you have, a whiskey dynasty like Teeling's making your whiskey, why not say it? Why pretend that somebody who can do it better than you, so anyway. So that was my education to this whole whiskey space. And then, I don't know, there's really good when people are looking to fund distilleries, invariably they go selling casks and things like that. So I said, when these deals mature, is there any secondary market for these casks? So one of the big successful ones was the founding fathers from Dingle. So that was, say, 10 years ago. People bought casks. Now they've matured, they're 10 years old, and what do they do with them? You know, where do they sell them? There's nowhere to bring the stock. So for me, as somebody who wants to wholesale buy whiskey, there's nowhere to go. And, you know, as I said, we're dealing with one supplier instead of having a plethora of options like there would be in a usual supply and demand scenario. I can see that the demand is there, and the supply of whiskey is there too. But there's just, it's an industry that's 100 years old, and it just hasn't, I suppose, more modern innovations haven't been applied to it. I don't think there's resistance to change. I think it was largely, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Well, I suppose with whiskey as well, and, you know, a lot of it is, I suppose, tradition as well.
And even that imagery, that brand, big time.
Yeah.
So that was my insight into that. And then on the flip side, I kind of, as a lockdown project for myself, I said, okay, let's try and find out what NFTs are, and let's try and get my head around blockchain, see if it's applicable to any of the things that I'm doing. I have friends and colleagues who are very immersed in the space, and some are dabbling in and out. Some have made money, some have lost money. And so I kind of studied, and I said, geez, there's applications here that could work for my own business and for maybe new businesses. So I suppose, like how we've met up today, you and me, I like networking. I'm a big believer in LinkedIn. I think if you need help, like, put it out there, ask people. All they can say is no. You know, like, all they can do is ignore you. And that's, you know, I have no problem with that. Move on to the next person. So there's two guys, Brian Elders and Stephen Brown, Irish guys, set up a digital assets company in Hong Kong. And they did that in 2017. And I met them. They were back in Ireland doing an event. And I just filed it away in my head. So I went back to LinkedIn. I said, okay, cryptocurrency, first connections. The lads came up, messaged them. I said, I'm trying to set up this whiskey exchange, and I really feel that there's blockchain applications for it. And they said, okay, we get it. You know, and I think they got it far more than I did, to be honest. They instantly saw the applications. So we became business partners, and that's where we are. So what I started doing then was just, we spent a while kicking around different ideas and how we'd go about it. And part of that was really just me putting up things on LinkedIn and seeing who was interested, you know, seeing who thought it was a good idea, taking feedback from people. And so far, so good. So we're in the process of raising money at the moment to build the exchange, which is going very well. The mechanism for it is a thing called a token raise, an ITO or an IDO, initial decentralized offering or initial token offering. A little bit like a share offering. We're selling tokens instead of shares. And traction seems good. So it's usually for me, you'd kind of build a business and try and get the money after it. So it's an unusual way to do it, but it just means that you can fast track it. So hopefully we can raise a reasonably large amount of money in a short space of time, because building software is expensive. And also, while I've no doubt there's demand and supply there, a marketplace is a tricky thing to do. So usually in a business, you provide the product and people come and buy it, and they're there or they're not. But in this, we need people to bring the product and we need people to come and buy it. So usually one side is keener than the other. So one of the advantages of having some liquidity and raising money is that the distilleries say, we kind of get it, we're not ready yet. We say, okay, well, look, we'll buy the casks from you. We'll sell them to the investors that we know are there. And when you believe it, then you come on board and take us out. And I believe as soon as they see us making a middleman margin that rightfully could be theirs, that will be the stepping stone to get them in. And the idea is an exchange just to connect people. How we'll make money is transaction fees on the transactions. And that's Dram. So it is primarily a whiskey business, you know, an asset trading. Whiskey is an asset trading platform, but it's powered by crypto in the background. So it's not a coincidence. They're two kind of sexy, buzzy things at the moment. Thankfully, Irish whiskey is in a good place. People are, you know, they can buy Bitcoin now on Revolut and it's accessible. People are saying, okay, so, you know, we've these schmaltzy phrases, you know, we're tokenizing liquid gold and where crypto and whiskey intersect, but they're catching people's attention.
They do,
and
absolutely.
I think what will resonate is that while we're using a token raise to do it, it's a real business involving a real asset, real distilleries, you know, that there's a clear roadmap there for something that hopefully will be financially sustainable and will grow, as opposed to just a cryptocurrency play.
Yes, I think that's hugely important, because, you know, probably more than 90% of what you see at the moment being tokenized is it's art, it's things like that. There isn't a real asset kind of behind a lot of the projects.
It's certainly harder to grasp or get your head around. For me,
it is
anyway.
The way I've always described, and I'm not criticizing that in any way. Yeah. I think it's brilliant. I think it's actually going to be a fantastic outlet for artists. The way I try and always explain to myself is, think of Da Vinci had to do Mona Lisa on an iPad. How's he going to sell the original?
Yeah, true. It's a very good point. I like it. It's a good analogy.
That's kind of the way I get wrap my head around it.
When you said so I don't know where that art piece will end up. But for me, with any of these new things, there's always a fear about, okay, when the music stops, like, am I going to be left holding something that isn't valuable? And so I don't know where that will go. Digital art, I think it's here to stay and it's a sustainable thing, but I would be spooked by some of the values.
Yeah.
Whereas at least with whiskey, it's a real thing.
Tangible.
And people will trade it.
Yeah.
And our platform is, the value in that is from people trading that asset. So if that asset isn't going anywhere, they should always be used for our platform. And then it's utility token. You can't use the platform without the token. So then there's use for the token. That's my pitch. There you go. Yeah.
So in terms, I suppose, of if we were to look at who the key stakeholders are in the project and the main problems you feel this is going to solve for them or make lives easier, what are the main benefits do you feel are going to come from this?
So I suppose I've talked primarily about maybe people looking to buy casks like myself, but if you take it from the distillery side, so ultimately no distilleries, no whiskey. So like they're as stakeholders go, they're important. They have the ability to make this incredibly valuable asset. So they lay out millions of euros in building a distillery. They have no money coming in for a number of years. And even then, when they get to it being whiskey after 3 or 4 years, depends on the country, but in Ireland, it's 3 years. Although if you want to sell Irish whiskey in America, they require it to be 4 years. So they build this asset and it's worth a certain amount. And they say, geez, we'd love to have a 7-year-old whiskey. And there's a trade-off. So if you sell your 3-year-old whiskey now, you're not going to have 7-year-old whiskey in 4 years' time. So people sell some of it. And so you're holding this valuable asset that is very hard to it creates cash flow difficulties for the business. Yeah. So I'm slow to use the pun about bringing liquidity to the market, but it is that very thing. I think it will solve a lot of pain for distilleries in that they can sell casks whenever they want and similarly buy them. So they say, okay, if we sell our casks now, we can always buy those casks back, our other casks in 7 years or whenever it is. So having that selection and volume and liquidity in the market, I think will make life of distilleries a lot easier. And then on the flip side, I think there's a number of people who might want to buy those. So other people with spirits brands like myself, even other distilleries, because a mixed portfolio of stock, people are looking for a stable. So somebody has bought Bitcoin 2 years ago, and even though the price is down a little bit now, it's still well up. And they say, I just don't know where Bitcoin is going long term. I believe in it, but I'd like to take 25% of my gains, and I'd like to put them somewhere that's still appreciating but it's relatively stable. I think whiskey is a good place to do it. So, okay, you mightn't double overnight, but it won't go to zero overnight either. So you can get 10 or 15% a year, which in my books is a really good return. And you actually own something. So you own those. So even if you're buying it through an NFT, that NFT is a smart contract. That NFT represents ownership of that whiskey. So I think for me, when we talk about the digital art thing, so we auctioned, Kinsale Spirits auctioned a NFT recently, and that NFT represented a 20-year-old cask of whiskey.
What change did you do on Ethereum?
We did it on OpenSea, which would be not really fit for purpose, to be honest, which is one of the reasons we're building DramEx. It was a good illustration of that point, and that we put it up there and nobody even really noticed because there's no real world assets on it. It's all for digital art and stuff. And in fairness, they say that. So we put it up there, and then we said, okay, how do we get traction? So we started letting, there is a significant intersection of people who are into whiskey and crypto out there, and you can find them through LinkedIn. So we said, just so you know, this is for sale. And they got talking. So eventually the thing sold for $100,000, which is great for us. And we're trying to fund a distillery. So
yeah, that's unreal.
Yeah, so that was about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months. It did lots of things. It proved use case for DramEx. It proved an appetite for buying a cask at a premium price. It is money that would go straight into the distillery for us, Kinsale. So it did lots of things. But it was a good learning curve because a lot of people thought, the NFT just represents the cask. You don't get the actual whiskey. No, you do. You entirely do if you want to. Yeah. My recommendation for the person who's bought it there, and they have, because obviously we had to interact with them to liaise with it, because the asset was in our possession. They've decided to let it sit there. They believe that it's going up in value. So even whiskey's value doesn't go up uniformly over time. There's certain years, so you're used to seeing 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, maybe 15, 21 tends to be a number, 18 and 21. So the fact that's 20 years old, it'll be significantly more valuable. The jump from 20 to 21 is more than the jump from 21 to 22, if you know what I mean, because 21 is like a recognized number in whiskey branding. So the buyer said, I'd like to leave with you for a year. If there's any storage costs, I'm happy to cover them. And in relation to his appreciation, the storage costs will be minute, less than 0.5%. So it's a microcosm, but it's a good example of how these assets will be transferred and represented and explained even in these discussions, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose the interesting thing is it does open up a huge secondary market and an ease of transfer of the asset, whereas traditionally I would imagine, I don't know anything about, but I would imagine selling it would have been quite a difficult task, especially if you were trying to do it to someone, you know, over in another country. Like,
not even the logistics, because invariably the cask probably won't move from where it is. It's just the ownership. But how do you get at those people and let them know that it's there? So for us, I'm hoping we're opening it up to not just whiskey investors, but also crypto investors, and ultimately it's a platform token, and that platform will live or die in the activity and strength of the community we build around it. So the community will be the people who hold Dram tokens and use them to interact with the platform, and those some of those platform users, this community, will be interested in investment and appreciation, and others will be interested in whiskey. But ultimately, the more people are buying whiskey, the better for everyone that's involved. You know, it's creating demand of a scarce asset. So I'm hoping that it becomes significant enough that that community becomes a bit of a trendsetter.
Very cool. One thing on the secondary market there that I've noticed a lot in the art space, that built into the smart contracts would be like the original owner. The contract could be sold on 5, 6, 7, 8 times, but the original owner will always get 10% on each of those transactions.
Bit like the soccer players sometimes, yeah,
yes,
and the clubs,
exactly,
yeah. Cork City have done well over that over the years. Yeah.
I mean, that would be, you know, an additional revenue source potentially for distilleries as well. Like if they're doing a special run, and when that run is sold on, that they get a certain back every time, a certain bit back every time.
So if you go to look at two casks next to each other, even from different distilleries, you have a law called the Irish Whiskey Act, which determines a whiskey can be made, and the parameters are very tight. So say grain whiskey or malt whiskey, even from different distilleries in Ireland, will be quite similar. Not to make light of the craft involved in it, but the ingredients you can use are explicitly are laid out. But after that, there's a load of variations that can take place. So similarly, when we're selling whiskey NFTs, not all casks are equal and not all whiskey NFTs. So, for example, our plan when we put a new whiskey NFT as opposed to new whiskey up there, is that there's built into the price is 3 years storage and insurance prepaid. So in 2.5 years, if that sells versus a new minted NFT, so they could be the same product, but one has 3 years insurance prepaid. It's a bit like if I offered you 2 ready-to-go phones and I said, this has €100 credit on it and this doesn't have any. Well, then the one with €100 is worth more than the one that isn't, even though they're the same phone. So going back to your thing, that having the nature of that smart contract are what that NFT entitles you to do or not to do will greatly influence the value for it and the demand for it. And I think that, again, a marketplace is about being able to compare different things and saying, yeah, so if somebody says, I think there's shortage of those, I'm going to buy it and sell it next week, I'm going to buy it and sell it in 10 years, well, then a different NFT for a different buyer. Like, you know, if you go back, yeah, I hope I'm answering your question.
What I'm thinking is, right now in the whiskey marketplace as it is at the moment, if I buy a cask off you, and you're the original distiller, and I sell it on, you know nothing about that, you get nothing for that.
Yes.
But through the smart contracts, potentially the distiller could have built in, that
entirely.
as soon as that moves, that they still get a percentage of it, which is what's happening in the arts
big time.
marketplace.
And what like it's very equitable, isn't it? You know, And I think as long as there's appreciation, and there has been in aging whiskey for the last 100 years, why shouldn't there continue to be? I don't think there's a reason why that can't be shared equally. And as we said at the start, like without distilleries, there'll be no whiskey, so their buy-in is essential. And thankfully, we're getting a very warm. I suppose I can see the need for it firsthand as somebody who's a brand looking to buy whiskey, and at the same breath, somebody's looking to build a distillery and fund it. And knowing that even once we get the thing up and going, we still have 3 or 4 years of cash flow pain before we've anything to sell, you know. And even then we say, we're halfway to have a 7-year-old whiskey. If we sell it now, we'll have to start again, you know. So I can see that. So I think, look, as somebody hopefully will be a distillery builder and owner soon, I'm all for that. I'm all for your idea and taking my distillery royalties. Somebody emailed me with a very interesting idea today. They said, what happens when somebody drinks the whiskey? In other words, when they say, okay, I'm going to take my cask, going to bottle it. And so we say, okay, the NFT ceases to exist. It becomes burned. It's the expression for extinguished, burned, no longer exist. They said, but particularly so it would be a big thing for people who enjoy fine whiskey to collect the empty bottles. And, you know, it's a nice collection. And you say, like, it's like a roadmap of your whiskey journey. And they were saying, well, could you almost create I call them top trumps or playing cards, like the basketball ones, but you know, one representing that bottle of whiskey, to say, like, this is my bottle collection. These are the ones I don't own this asset anymore, but I used to, you know, like, and this is my trading journey. So does it really have any value in a monetary sense? No, but it would be a nice thing to have. And like lots of things, whiskey is something that people collect for all kinds of reasons. Some people don't drink whiskey at all, they collect it for financial reasons. It's a nice thing to give as presents. It's a nice legacy thing. But also they look great. You know, all the different bottles in the packages. It's a lovely thing to have a whiskey cabinet or a shelf. So I suppose a digital representation of that. There's all these little skews and ideas that are popping up, and they're largely possible because that whole DeFi and NFT space is exploding, and because, as you said, digital artists are kind of like, they're really the pioneers in the space, and everyone else is saying, oh, I'd like a little bit of that. You know, I wonder if that aspect could work. So it's a fun space.
The collectible space as well is after blowing up completely. I mean, Top Shots is selling all the basketball clips for like insane sums of money. And I think is it Major League Baseball in the States, or I think they're after doing a project now as well.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So I mean, the collectible space, I mean, it's literally moving from, you know, having the Premier League stickers in the book to having your MetaMask wallet on your phone with all your collectible NFTs in there.
And in a way, it's funny how things can stay the same for 30 years and then jump. So one concern that I would have had, and a number of people have said to me, is that, are you afraid that this is just an intermediary jump onto whatever the next stage is? And I suppose the example I use is that I don't think it's going to be like mini discs, you know, like that's going to be gone near. But it's like CDs, and it dominates for 30 years and then evolves. Like, that's okay with me. Yeah. Like there's not many technologies get 30 years of prime, you know. So I think they're around to stay, and they'll evolve. But I think that the adaptability of it means that whatever challenges they face, I think they'll overcome it. It's a very adaptable way to represent an asset or a collectible or whatever it is.
In terms of the token itself, are you at the stage where you know, like, what is it going to be built on Ethereum? Is it how the kind of?
So I suppose we're in a nice place in that different protocols which would inform that are approaching us. So, and they have different incentives. So some have high volume, some offer you grants to be on them, some have accelerator programs. So for us, we're trying to see, okay, what is the best fit for us? There's no point somebody saying, here's a really nice big check, and we're sitting on a platform with no traction and nobody buys our token. Yeah. Similarly, we go to somebody like Binance and we're the smallest fish in a really big pond, and, you know, we don't get traction there. So trying to find the right fit. And that's where Soar's Digital Assets, my partners, Brian, Stephen, Oscar and Matt, the team come in and trying to find the best fit for us. And we're lucky in that we thought we'd be in a place going out and looking for, you know, a home, whereas people are coming to us, which is nice. It's nice to be in demand. And I think really it's just down to that Whisky Crypto, two things that seem to work well together. That's resonating with people. Like, they say, I think people will buy into this.
Yeah, I mean, and especially online, it's all about finding the right niches. I mean, when you cross two niches like that, it's not hard to get in front of people who have those two specific interests.
It's two big markets, and there's a big subset, and nearly everybody now knows something about crypto. Everybody knows something about whiskey, so you're not totally reinventing the wheel. People know older whiskey is more valuable. You can't turn on the news or read any medium without reading about Bitcoin or whatever that's going on there. So I wouldn't say we're pushing an open door in the project because we've lots of hurdles to overcome. But we're certainly pushing an open door in piquing people's interest.
Yep.
We talked about it at the start. It's one of the easier. It's proving easy to get people's attention. Whether we can capitalize that into a valuable token offering, we'll see. I think our token offering will probably happen in August. So things move, what's that, 6, 8, 10 weeks away. So it's not, things move quickly enough in that world, which appeals to me and terrifies me. It's
sure. Then the
roller coaster.
NFT market went down about 90% there or so, like recently.
And timing might be everything. We looked at making a very rapid push on this project. So we were working over Christmas, and the market was really frothy. In February, it was probably like peak NFT time and for token offerings, and we just really weren't ready. And our team, so we've built up a team of about 14 people now involved in advisors and different things, and there's probably a few more skill sets that we need to add to it. So I suppose it's a trade-off between being ready and at the right time and not missing that gap. Could I spend another year trying to figure out all these things? Absolutely, but will there still be a demand then for this pitch, or will somebody else do it first? I don't know.
Well, I think you're in a very different position, we'll say, to most of the projects, because there's an asset backing up. There's whiskey backing this up, whereas 99% of the projects that seem to be out there at the moment, there isn't. So I think it's very different to. You can see why something like this is going to hold its value and appreciate.
I hope you're right, but even if you put in, say, whiskey and crypto, there's a few other projects knocking about there, and most of them are involving tokenizing assets, things like that. And I think a lot of those people end up being collaborators of ours because they'll tokenize assets. They'll still need access to a market to sell them, and that's where we come in, providing that link. So I'm used to being. So I brought out a gin when there was 1,000 other gins, and I opened a bar when there was lots of other bars, and I think competition is good. It keeps you hungry and it educates the market in general. So it's my first time kind of being out on my own, trying to figure something out. And it means you're not wrong, but doesn't mean you're right either. I think we're going to live and die by how that token offering goes.
Yeah, I suppose if we were to say, perfect world, maybe 3 years from now, where do you see DramEx, and what are your hopes for it?
So the timeline is to raise their money, that token offering. The people who buy Dram, which is our token, will become our community. I think as quickly as we can build some kind of a beta version of that exchange. We already are either acquiring or coming to arrangements with people for assets to put on it. And at the same time teeing up investors, so warming up that marketplace.
Are you having any trouble in that space, actually, just because whiskey is so traditional?
No, none at all, actually.
Cool.
For two reasons. One, there's already a massive, not secondary market, but secondary ownership is out there. So people have all these assets, didn't realize how valuable they were, didn't really realize selling them was an asset. So the idea of being able to liquidate that asset is revolutionary for them. They're delighted with it. Yeah. So I don't think that will be an issue. And for distilleries who may be initially hesitant, we're quite happy to be that bridge to say either we'll facilitate the sale or we'll buy the asset from you and sell it on and do a profit share or take a margin or whatever it is. So to answer your question, I hope that we'll have a vibrant community and a very busy exchange. And that's the idea. I think there's all sorts of other avenues we could go down then, but if we get that far, we'll be laughing.
Jeez, bring it all together. Well, fair play, man. When I saw it first, as I say, I was like, holy crap, that's coming out of Cork.
All good things come out of Cork. Only good things come out of Cork.
That is true.
Yeah.
Brilliant. If people would like to find out a bit more about the project, where should they head to?
Sure. So I'm always posting on LinkedIn. Our website is www.dramex.io. I'm new to IO domains, but apparently in this decentralized world, .io is where it's at. So that's probably the best place. There's a link to our deck and our white paper and all the things on that. But feel free to contact me through LinkedIn or Facebook or any of the other bloody channels that we all get plagued on. Anytime, I'd be delighted.
Brilliant altogether. Ernest, thanks so much for joining me today.
Superb. That was a pleasure. Great chat. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please jump into your Apple Podcasts, your Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcast platform is, and just make sure to follow and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to leave a review if you enjoyed the episode, I'd absolutely love for you to do that. We put out an episode every single week, all with digital marketing tips, case studies, ways to build your business with digital marketing. Also, if you are interested in bringing your own business online or looking at scaling your business, we'd love to chat with you here at CLIQ. You can visit us online at CLIQ.ie.